This is the Ben Shapiro Show, big hour planned for you. A little bit later on in the hour, we're going to be having on the only pollster who even remotely got it right, Robert Cahaly. We're going to be having him on to take his victory lap, his well-deserved victory lap, plus a victory lap from Representative Chip Roy, who defeated Wendy Davis, who's a terrible person in Texas. We'll get to all that a little bit later on in the hour. First, your updates, because this race is not yet over. CNN, Fox News, they've both called Michigan for Joe Biden at this point. They've also both called Wisconsin for Joe Biden at this point. That means that if that is accurate, and Trump is challenging in Wisconsin, he is challenging in Michigan, they have filed lawsuits in Wisconsin. They are suggesting that there may be voter irregularities in Wisconsin. At the very least, there will be a recount. In Michigan, they are suggesting that the voting ought to be stopped until there can be a better way of getting poll watchers in there, because apparently there's some polling stations where lawyers for Trump have actually been expelled from the premises. At least those are the reports that we are seeing online. But assuming that both Michigan and Wisconsin did in fact go to Joe Biden by extraordinarily narrow margins, that leaves one possible opening for Trump, maybe two. Okay, the possible openings for Trump, he needs obviously to win Pennsylvania. And then if he wins Pennsylvania, he needs to take Arizona or Nevada. If he were to take Pennsylvania and Nevada, then we get the apocalyptic scenario of 269 versus 269, right? Then you actually get an electoral college heat, and this thing gets decided by the House of Representatives. Nevada is accelerating its release of voting details. So Nevada, I don't know what they're doing over in Nevada. Honest to God, I do not understand what they're doing over in Nevada. So they paused the voting count, and then they were like, you know what? Well, we'll give you all the votes on Thursday. Now they're saying, oh yeah, you know what? Now that you guys are also curious about this, I guess we'll accelerate and we'll give it to you later today. What now? Like, what? You didn't think that in an election year we might want to know the results fast? Like, you were just going to take your time. Would you have to go to the strip club? Like, what's going over in Nevada? What's happening in Nevada? You had to go to the magic show? I'm very confused. Okay, we will have Nevada results a little bit later on. We're also going to get final results from Arizona tonight. Okay, so the Trump campaign, I've been speaking with folks over at the Trump campaign, and they're expressing a lot of optimism about both Arizona and Pennsylvania. In fact, they said it is not just possible, they're suggesting it is likely that Trump can still win Arizona and Pennsylvania. Here are the statistics that you need to know via Team Trump. In Arizona, Joe Biden currently leads by approximately 93,500 votes. There were 605,000 votes cast on Election Day. In order for Trump to make up that 93,500 vote deficit, he would need to poll 57.73% of those 605,000 votes. Team Trump says they are currently outdoing those numbers. They say they're polling 62% in Maricopa County, which is Phoenix and the Phoenix suburbs, and 72 to 80% in the other counties. That means the Team Trump is projecting anywhere from a 30,000 to a 40,000 vote win in Arizona. They are also projecting that in Pennsylvania, Trump will win. Trump himself has already said he is claiming the state, which is not, of course, how this works. You don't get to declare that you want a state. It's not like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy. Nonetheless, Bill Stepien has suggested that Team Trump has won Pennsylvania. The reason he is saying that is because they're looking at the stats, and here's what they see. Trump is up by approximately 454,000 votes. There are 1.12 million votes outstanding in Pennsylvania. Biden requires 78% of those votes to make up the nearly 500,000 vote difference. Now, 300,000 of those votes are in Philadelphia, right? So that narrows the gap significantly because Philly is a Biden town. Even if Biden were to win 95% of those votes, however, he still would need to pull 70% of the other votes, which is a heavy lift. So Team Trump is expressing a fair bit of, they say that by Friday, it's going to be clear that Trump is still the president. They say that by Friday, when all the votes are counted in Pennsylvania, when all the votes are counted in Arizona, Fox News, AP are going to be put on the hook, and they're going to have to reverse themselves on Arizona. Meanwhile, we are seeing all sorts of confusion in Michigan. People are gathering outside the polling places in Michigan and outside the vote counting areas in Michigan. And the media are covering it as though a mob is at hand. Now, I do love how the media will call it a mob when people literally stand around outside a balloting place. You know, when mobs actually burn things down, then they're like, oh, whatever, that's not a mob. That's just a peaceful protest. Looks like a mostly peaceful protest to me, to be honest with you. Nonetheless, right now, this thing is still very much up in the air. And anybody who claims that it is not up in the air is trying to sell you something at this point. We're going to know the outcome of the election in all likelihood by Friday, one way or another. And we'll probably have a pretty good idea of where things stand when all of the Arizona votes come in this evening. Apparently, there are two tranches of votes that are supposed to come in. One happens at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, and the other happens apparently just after midnight Pacific time. So we'll have a very good idea at that point what's going on. President Trump tweeted out earlier, "We have claimed for electoral vote purposes the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which won't allow legal observers, the state of Georgia and the state of North Carolina, each one of which has a big Trump lead. Additionally, we hereby claim the state of Michigan, if in fact there was a large number of secretly dumped ballots, as has been widely reported." Okay, well, you can't claim Michigan. I mean, that's not how that works. Right? You're going to file a lawsuit, right? You're going to dispute the election. But you don't just get to claim states willy-nilly. It's not like hungry hippos out here. Now, he may very well be right. It may be that he wins Michigan. It may be that the vote count there is not complete. It may be that all of the people who are calling it are doing so preemptively, or that they're voter irregularities. We're going to find out. Rudy Giuliani did a presser in Philadelphia, the president's personal lawyer, did a presser in Philadelphia claiming that a national lawsuit is in the offing to stop what he believes is voter fraud, or at the very least voter irregularities in all of these toss-up states. Here was Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, just a few moments ago.
We are going to continue the lawsuit here. We're going to bring a second one, and then we're going to bring a federal lawsuit. And we're going to take a very good look at whether we bring this nationally. We certainly are going to bring it here and in Wisconsin. Quite possibly, we'll do a national lawsuit and really expose the corruption of the Democrat Party. But this is beyond anything I've ever seen before. This comes when you think you have so much power and you own the media that you can do anything you want.
Okay, well, they're going to have to substantiate those accusations, obviously, if this thing goes to court. Right now, because Fox News has already called Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, that puts Joe Biden 6 electoral votes away in the Fox News count from being president of the United States. Presumably, if Nevada comes in for Biden, Fox becomes the first network to call the election for Joe Biden, which would, I'm sure, do them wonders with the Fox News audience, considering how early they called Arizona. Whether or not that's right, a little bit of caution might have been in the offing. But we'll see. We'll see. It's weird that we live in a media environment in which being first is much preferred to being cautious. It seems like the opposite should be the case, given how often people have gotten things wrong in the recent past. Okay, so the race continues apace. Joe Biden did a presser today. He then called a lid. He called 2 lids. He called one early this morning, then he called one later. It's just going to be lids all the way down. So here is Joe Biden claiming that he is going to be the next president of the United States, which, of course, again, it means nothing until the counts are actually completed.
Now, after a long night of counting, it's clear enough states to reach 270 electoral votes. I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Okay, so a little bit of cautious wording there from Joe Biden, basically saying, I'm not saying we won, but I'm pretty sure we won. Right then, Joe Biden went off on the popular vote, which of course nobody cares about because that is not how the game is played. If this were about the popular vote, then what you would assume is that President Trump would worry deeply about going to deep red states and making sure that everybody got out to vote in, say, Tennessee. Right? If this were all just about the popular vote, then what you would end up with is Joe Biden campaigning solely in California and New York and Massachusetts, and Donald Trump campaigning all over the deepest red states. He'd be in Alabama all day long, making sure that every last person in Alabama went out and voted. But that's not how this works. Here's Joe Biden talking about the popular vote, even though nobody cares and it is completely irrelevant.
Every indication is that the majority will grow. We have a popular vote lead of nearly 3 million votes, and every indication is that will grow as well. Indeed, Senator Harris and I are on track to win more votes than any ticket in the history of this country that ever won the presidency and vice presidency. Over 70 million votes.
People say this sort of stuff, that's because the electorate expanded. Okay, he didn't win the greatest vote share in the history of the country. He won 50.3% of the vote by current count. Donald Trump won 48.1% of the vote. That is not a massive victory by any stretch of the imagination for Joe Biden, even in the popular vote. That dude was expected to win by 7 percentage points. Instead, if he does win, he's going to end up winning by 2. Okay, that is nowhere near the kind of margin he was supposed to win by. He ran a lackluster garbage campaign. He's a lackluster garbage candidate. Everybody knows it. The only reason he won, if he indeed ends up winning, is because the media put their thumb and their elbow and their entire body weight on the scale against Donald Trump, and he was able to run headlong away from any difficult questions the entirety of the campaign. If Donald Trump ends up not being the president of the United States, the number one factor in him not being president of the United States will have been the media, which militarized to their fullest extent on behalf of Joe Biden. That is a simple truth. Now, the only good news is if Joe Biden is president, he is going to be a much hampered, feeble president. Right now, it appears pretty confident that the Republicans are going to maintain their Senate majority, which means he's not going to be dealing with a pliant Chuck Schumer pushing to get rid of the filibuster. He is instead going to be dealing with cocaine Mitch. And good luck to Joe Biden on that one. That's good news for Americans, really good news for Americans. Having the backstop of Mitch McConnell and a Republican Senate is extremely important because Joe Biden, with all of the controls of the government levers, would be a hell of a lot more scary than feeble old Joe going up against cocaine Mitch, one of the great political operators that I've ever seen. So that's worst case scenario. But this thing ain't over yet. It is not over yet, even though everybody is trying to declare it over yet. My favorite part of this is that Joe Biden then declared the presidency is not a partisan institution. Yeah, we're going to get bipartisan Joe after campaigning on wokeness and how half of Americans are terrible, awful, no good, very bad people. Now he's going to be the president for all Americans. Yeah, good luck with that, Joe.
To make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as enemies. We are not enemies. What brings us together as Americans is so much stronger than anything that can tear us apart. So let me be clear. We are campaigning as a Democrat, but I will govern as an American president. Mm-hmm. The presidency itself is not a partisan institution.
Okay, he was only VP under the most viciously partisan president of my lifetime. Yes, that is true. Barack Obama was more of a vicious partisan than Donald Trump. Donald Trump actually signed into law bills with bipartisan support. None of those were really negotiated or signed by Barack Obama. Okay, so spare me the histrionics about how Joe Biden is a great unifier. He is not. So no matter what happens with the Biden-Trump race, and it appears, according to the Fox News analysts, that Biden has the upper hand at this point. They are basically one state away from declaring the election for Biden. If Nevada comes in for Biden, they declare that Biden is the president. The Trump campaign keeps suggesting that Arizona is still on the table and Pennsylvania is going to be a win for them. We'll see how all of that shakes out, obviously. Regardless of what happens on the presidential level, this is a wild outperformance by Republicans. They're going to pick up somewhere from 7 to 12 seats in the House. They're going to maintain the Senate. Susan Collins wins in Maine. Tom Tillis wins in North Carolina. Joni Ernst wins in Iowa. Steve Daines wins in Montana. Republicans maintain both seats in Georgia in all likelihood. That means that Joe Biden would be face down with Mitch McConnell and a Senate majority led by Republicans. Not only that, Donald Trump has opened some doors here. Even if he ends up losing, he has opened some doors to future Republicans. According to exit polls from Edison, this was last night, according to Matt Bruning, who is a socialist, actually, from People Policy Project. He tweeted out support for Trump by race and gender. Trump lost 5 points among white men. He picked up 2 points among white women. 54% of white women voted for him. He got 17% black male vote. Okay, that's a 4% uptick from last time around. He got 8% of the black female vote, 35% of the male Latino vote, and 28% of the Latino female vote, plus 36% of others. I mean, those are amazing crosstabs. What that shows is that Donald Trump, by the exit polls, has actually outperformed any Republican since 1960 in terms of the minority vote. That is astonishing. Astonishing. And they're supporting data to back this up. According to the New York Times, their exit polls showed that Donald Trump won the black vote. He won 12% of the black vote. Okay, that is an improvement on his performance from 2016. By race, Donald Trump won only 8% of the black vote last time. This time, 12%. By race, Donald Trump last time won 29% of the Hispanic vote. This time, he won 32% of the Hispanic vote. By race, last time he won 29% of the Asian vote. This time, 31% of the Asian vote. And for others, he won 37% last time and 40% this time. This is according to the New York Times. Okay, those are excellent numbers for the president. Like much better numbers for the president in minority communities. Now, he did drop his margin of victory among people who are 65 and older, won 53% of the vote last time among 65 and over. This time among 65 and over, who won 51%. But the reality is that while everybody in the media keeps saying it was white people who put Trump over the top, precisely the opposite. Trump actually underperformed his performance last time with white people and did better with minorities. He particularly did heavy work among Latinos in Florida. If you look at the Republican coalition in Florida, that looks like the future of the Republican Party. 55% of Cubans voted for Donald Trump. 30% of Puerto Ricans voted for Donald Trump. A huge percentage of Venezuelans voted for Donald Trump. And the reason for that is, I think, twofold. Threefold. One, Trump actually took the time when he campaigned. While the media was mocking his poor Donald Trump dance and music videos, people were actually watching that stuff. Two, Democrats kept saying that they were warm towards socialism. You know who doesn't like socialism? Anybody who's lived under it. People who've lived in Venezuela or Cuba, turns out they're not real fond of socialism. Okay, so that was factor number two. And factor number three is that Florida just happens to be a redder state. A lot of the people who are left behind by the Democrats who proclaim Black Lives Matter and sort of left Latinos behind, that has real impact. See, Democrats believe that if they just pander to each racial group, everything is fine. If you just say amnesty to a person of Latino extraction, that means they're going to vote Democrat. Or if you just say BLM to black people, they're going to vote Democrat. But this election shows that is not the case. You got to go, you got to do the heavy lifting, you got to go and you got to campaign, and Trump did that, and it changed the math in Florida fairly dramatically. That is a much more durable and interesting coalition than the historic Republican coalition. There's a lot of talk in the aftermath of 2012, after Mitt Romney lost, about making the party more diverse. Who the hell knew that it would be Donald Trump who did that? I think one of the reasons for that, by the way, is because Donald Trump has a very durable public image. And we've talked about the fact that everybody has an opinion on Trump. Well, that has its downsides. It also has its upsides, meaning that if you're a Latino person and you've been watching Trump for 30 years, and you're watching him on TV, and suddenly they declare that he's a racist who hates Latinos, you're like, well, really? I've been watching him for a long time. Same thing with a lot of black Americans. Donald Trump is used in rap music from the 90s as like the epitome of being rich. And suddenly you're turning him into a vicious racist just because he's a Republican? I'm not sure it washed. So the woke narrative went down to flaming defeat last night, and that is a very, very good thing. So a lot of good things happened last night, even as we await the final outcome of the presidential election. We are joined on the line by Robert Cahaly. He is chief pollster at the Trafalgar Group. Of course, gained media attention in 2016 for being one of the pollsters to accurately predict the election of Donald J. Trump. Was much derided by the chicken entrail reading other pollsters in the business this year when he proclaimed that Donald Trump was leading in states ranging from Michigan to Pennsylvania. Well, now it seems like he's the only person who even remotely got it right. Robert, welcome back to the program for a well-deserved victory lap.
Hey, it is great to be here, and as complicated as today is, it's been gratifying for us to see all this, to get all this attention.
Well, let's talk about, again, what you guys did right and what everybody else did wrong. So there's new polls showing that a huge percentage of Trump voters say that they just lied to pollsters, or at least they said that they were not willing to answer questions from pollsters. You identified a Trump vote that the media suggested did not exist. Honestly, I was taken aback by how badly the polls did, considering they were supposed to have fixed this thing. I mean, that's the part that's so astonishing to me. You know, as somebody who's a fan of data, I have a certain level of faith that if somebody really, really screws up, the next time around they try to do a little bit better. But they did worse this time than they did the last time in terms of polling a lot of these races. That was particularly true in Florida, where they screwed it up in 2018. This time, the Real Clear Politics poll average had Joe Biden up somewhere between 1 and 2 points. He ended up losing it by 3. You had Donald Trump winning the state by 2 points. The Real Clear Politics polling average suggested that Wisconsin was a blowout in favor of Joe Biden. You had that thing basically dead even. It was dead even. What did you do right that everybody else did wrong?
Well, first of all, I wasn't shocked at all because they didn't understand what they did wrong, and they still do not what they did wrong. They don't understand. They cannot accept that the model of certainly the live call is dead. The live call, live person, people are going to hide their feelings, especially in the light of cancel culture and being judged for their opinion. And so the live interview is dead. They have to get over that. They got to let that sacred cow go. But even worse, Michael Moore pointed out something that was very true, and that is Trump people tend to be even suspicious of giving their answer to anybody. And so you have to figure out a way to get around all of this. And you know, we explained what we did in 2016 with the neighbor question, which helped us. But this was a different threshold because in 2016, it was just give people something anonymous and that's good enough. But this year it was a little more because some of them just didn't want to participate at all. And they weren't anticipating the low propensity voters that were going to turn out. You know, as I think I told you before, we isolated what that universe was, and we built them into all of our models. They were being polled people whose only vote in the last 20 years was 2016, people who fit another set of parameters that we put together. And then we had another new technique that we use that we're not telling everybody. I mean, we're just not, because it's really good. And there's people who sign NDAs with punitive damages and who know about it, and it's good. That's all I can tell you. It's really good. It told me what not only who it was, but what the real percentage was.
We're speaking with Robert
of how much hidden vote there was.
He's chief pollster at Trafalgar Group, and of course, the pollster who came closest to getting it right. So you suggested in the last few polls, you found that Trump had advantages in North Carolina, which it looks like he's going to win. And in Florida, you also suggested he had advantages in Arizona and Michigan. Michigan has now been called by most of the networks as a state for Joe Biden. Arizona has been called by Fox News and AP. It has not been called by anybody else. The Trump campaign is suggesting that Arizona is still very much in play. What do you make of that?
I mean, the dirty secret about how disorganized American elections are when you get this close is going to come out. I mean, there are things that go on that probably your listeners have no idea about. I mean, for example, do you know that people who are American expats who live overseas, in many cases, are allowed to vote in the state they last lived in, even if it was 10 years ago, and allowed to vote by email?
I did not know that.
These things are happening. That's right. There's things people don't have any idea. And so digging into these things deep there's going to be a lot of things that it's not all nefarious. It's just a little more, it's as disorganized as you might assume something that the government puts on would be.
So let's talk for a second about the future of the polling industry. So I can say safely that I am one of the people who is most likely, I think, on the right, to cite polls, and I would always cite them with a grain of salt, given how wrong they were last time around, and the fact that they were wrong in 2012 as well, but in a different direction. I pretty much believe that you can never cite a poll again because this has been such a debacle. And honestly, it was a debacle not just in the presidential race, particularly in Michigan and Wisconsin, where things are just nail-bitingly close, but also in the Senate races. I mean, there was not a single poll, not one, that had Susan Collins winning that race. She's going to run away with that race. There were polls that were showing that Jamie Harrison was going to run a competitive race with Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. He blew him out by 13 points. I mean, how should Americans be treating polls in the future? Is the polling industry basically dead?
Well, I should certainly hope it's not dead for all of us. If it's going to be dead for the rest of those guys, that will be fine. But remember, it's always about what your goal was. So if your goal was to reflect the election, it might be dead. But if your goal was to affect the election, then they might be declaring mission accomplished in a couple of days.
So it
depends on what your goal was.
Yeah. And so you think that there was an actual nefarious goal by some of these pollsters to rack up points on behalf of the Biden campaign and therefore dissuade Trump voters from even going to the polls? It seems to be what you're suggesting.
I am suggesting that if you believe the media has an agenda, how can you possibly believe the media pollsters don't have an agenda? I mean, I have to have a conversation with everyone who hires us to do a poll. And generally the way the conversation goes, if I'm doing this for you and you want to release it publicly, you need to understand, if you don't like what it says, we won't release it. But I will not cook it for you. My reputation is not worth that. I don't know that everyone has those conversations. I have reason to believe they, in fact, do not have those conversations. And if you look to the Senate races we poll, we actually predicted Mitt Sallie would lose. We predicted Tillis would win, and we also were the only ones who predicted John James would win. Now, that one's going to come down to the wire, too, and he might not. But everybody else said it was going to be a blowout, and we said he'd win by 1 point. And, again, we're going to be closer than everyone else.
So looking at some of the other pollsters, not all polls, as you mentioned, are created equal. It seems like some of these polls should just never be even looked at remotely again. The ones that I have in mind are Quinnipiac, which had Joe Biden up as of 2 days ago, 11 points in the national race, and was polling that way consistently throughout the race. They had Biden up 10 points, 11 points throughout the race. How are places like Quinnipiac taken seriously? Do you think they still get paid by the media outlets? Do you think the media outlets have any interest at all in having better pollsters, or are they just perfectly satisfied with throwing out whatever chum allows their listenership or readership or viewership to feel good about themselves?
Well, I mean, as much as I'm a fan of Fox News, I mean, look at how bad theirs are. And a lot, I mean, do you remember how many times last night the little meter showed like this huge percent, like an 80% chance of like Trump losing North Carolina? I mean, but they were basing their election desk calls on some surveys that they did that were already terrible. So I don't know how a lot of these guys stay employed. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense unless there's a reason. I don't understand how they failed again in 2018. I mean, they said they fixed it, but it wasn't adjusting for education. It was they weren't identifying the hidden voters. I watched an interview with Frank Luntz talking to Brett Baer today, and he was talking about, well, they missed this, they missed that, and they didn't find the Trump voters, and I know how. It's like, are you having an out-of-body experience? You missed this. You are the one who said that our industry, it will go away if we are wrong about this. You were wrong about it too. But yet he's still on Fox talking. How do you explain that?
And so we're speaking with Robert K. Haley, he's chief pollster at the Trafalgar Group, and obviously they came closest to getting this one right. So moving forward, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that President Trump eventually is declared not the winner of the election, and Joe Biden is declared the winner, and he's no longer on the ballot. Do you think that the social desirability bias that you've talked so much about, and that has really been a chief distinguishing feature of your polling strategy, do you think that remains in the absence of Trump, or do you think that that's a Trump-specific phenomenon?
I think that the social desirability bias that Trump had in 2016 would have evaporated. But the social desirability bias that is now a reflection of cancel culture will probably continue to a certain degree. Especially as people, if under a Biden, if in the scenario Biden were to win, and under a Biden administration, the punishment of conservative values, the canceling, the demonization is allowed to run rampant, then you will see people go further to ground with their genuine opinions.
Well, Robert K. Haley, again.
So I think it will be baked in.
Again, congratulations on your successful showing last night. You put a lot of people who are supposed to be the wisest among us. You really put them behind the eight ball. Trafalgar Group did an excellent job, as they have the last couple of elections, in forecasting this election in a way nobody else did. Congratulations, and dude, I hope that it results in money for you, because the other pollsters have received an enormous amount of money for getting this thing absolutely 100% wrong. I hope that the big checks come your way to continue doing what you're doing.
Well, listen, we appreciate that. It's been a bittersweet day. I mean, the country's going through a lot of drama, but we're getting a lot of accolades. So take it as it comes. But it's an honor to be on your show, and if you need anything, you let me know. I
appreciate it. It's Robert K. Haley, chief pollster at Trafalgar Group. So as we mentioned, it is chaos out there. You have some people forecasting that Trump is indeed going to win Pennsylvania. That is his campaign. You have others who are forecasting that he is going to lose Pennsylvania when all of the votes are eventually counted. And that includes a variety of mainstream media sources who are looking at the stats. Sean Trendy, who's been a guest on the program, he also suggests that there is a margin that could be made up here by Joe Biden. Jonathan Tamari, who is a writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he says the Trump's edge is now down to about 300,000 in Pennsylvania. There's still about 900,000 mail ballots uncounted as of yet. Biden has been winning about 78% of those. If that number holds, Biden would in fact surpass Trump's advantage in Pennsylvania. We're going to find out where all of this stands in very short order. Nevada is supposed to announce its statistics tonight. Arizona is supposed to announce its final statistics tonight. Trump has an awful lot of ground to make up, but this thing is not over yet. There are going to be lawsuits. There's going to be accusations of voter fraud, and we're going to have to see where all of it turns out. Every legitimately cast ballot should be counted, and no illegitimately cast ballot should be counted. All of that should be relatively uncontroversial at this point. We're joined on the line by Congressman Chip Roy, representative from the 21st District of Texas. Big winner last night, defeated Wendy Davis. That was a hotly contested race, considering that district covers parts of Austin. Wendy Davis, again, goes down to flaming defeat. Every time she runs for office, apparently, she goes down to flaming defeat every time she wants to enter the federal government. And that is excellent news, because basically the only thing she's ever famous for is abortion on demand. Congressman Roy, congratulations. Thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Ben, I appreciate it. Great to vanquish Wendy Davis, and hopefully she's done running for office. We'll see, but it's great to be victorious last night.
It is definitely a good thing. So Texas was originally forecast as a state that might go blue last night. Once again, this was Lucy with the football. The Democrats, it turns out, had no shot of winning Texas. Trump won the state by 6. You defeated Wendy Davis by fully 7% of the vote. Why do Democrats keep thinking that Texas is turnable, and then why does it turn out that Texas is never turnable?
Well, look, I think there's a number of reasons why, and I appreciate the question. People think that just because there's a lot of people who moved to Texas, they keep hanging their hat on, oh, these people moved there, Texas, all these Californians, but now we can flip it. Look, I run into thousands of people across Texas who are seeking refuge from California, seeking refuge from Oregon, from Chicago, from New York, and they seek freedom. I see them every day. I go to events, go to rallies, and I talk about them. They raise their hand. So I think that's a false notion. I also think what we saw yesterday, so many Hispanics voted for the president, voted for Republicans, and it proved a point. You remember back in 2012 when after the Romney loss, the RNC put out their autopsy saying we got to pretty much pander and, break out like a mariachi band or something in order to win Hispanic votes? It's a lie. It's not true. Hispanic voters want what we want, freedom, opportunity. They also want border security. They do. Border Patrol agents, Hispanics along the border are tired of cartels, endangering lives, both for people here and immigrants who seek to come here. They want what we want. They want the rule of law. And so I think we should put that to bed. And we should make everybody understand the president ran on border security. I ran on border security. It sells. And so I think we saw that come out in spades last night.
It is definitely impressive how Republicans turned out Hispanic voters, particularly in Texas and Florida, where the statistics show, once again, that all of the demographics is destiny nonsense that you hear from both Democrats fairly on a mainstream level and alt-righters. It's just crap. Republicans are fully capable of winning a heavy share of the Hispanic vote. In fact, in the single most Hispanic district in America, in Texas, 96% Hispanic district, Joe Biden only won that district 52-47 over Donald Trump, who, according to the media, was a vicious racist who hated everybody of Hispanic heritage and extraction. It is pretty incredible that despite 4 years of the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, calling Republicans vicious racists, Republicans on the national level outperformed their percentage votes with minorities by leaps and bounds. They've done so much better this year than they did in 2012, for example, that it should, once and for all, start to put to bed a lot of the kind of woke ideology that suggests that there's no way Republicans can ever make inroads into these groups.
No, look, that's 100% right. And I hope we remember that and that we talk about that we're running for the forgotten men and women who are working hard every day for America, that we're out there campaigning for the people who love their country, who want their communities protected, who stand with the police. This is not complex stuff. It's the basic duty of government. And if we do that, people flock to us. Look, there's a handful of these woke white liberals, college educated, sitting down in the suburbs, hand-wringing about all this. But look, they'll come home. And they'll come home when we go out and we start talking about keeping our community safe, having a strong economy, treating everybody with respect, but the rule of law matters. And be honest about it. And look, I think, honestly, if we had been on that message more robustly rather than on defense on the virus just a couple of weeks back, even sooner, I think the president would have rolled through the election. It wouldn't be close. Now, obviously, right now, we're hoping Arizona comes through. We're hoping the president pulls it through. But it's going to be really close. I'm certainly glad our election turned out well. And I ran in hardcore liberal Austin. I did better in Travis County in Austin this cycle than I did last cycle, running on a no-nonsense conservative agenda, highlighting a Wendy Davis side against the police, sides of BLM and Antifa. And I just took it head on, and we won.
It seems to me more than anything else, this election was a referendum on wokeness and cancel culture, because that's really what it was about. I mean, the polls got it wrong because they assumed that everybody who's talking to a pollster was speaking honestly and was not afraid of being canceled or ostracized. And that just isn't true. And Democrats never put forward any sort of policy proposals. It was all, you're a bad person if you vote for a Republican. You're a bad person if you vote for Donald Trump. And you're just as bad a person if you vote for Chip Roy. And I think the American people roundly rejected that notion yesterday, which is why an election that was supposed to go to Joe Biden by 7 points, in the end, even if it goes to Joe Biden, is going to go by an extraordinarily slim margin, and Republicans retain the Senate, and Republicans pick up 7 to 12 seats in the House.
No, that's exactly right. Like, Ben, I can't make this up. There was a time when I was campaigning a few weeks ago when I would say, look, Wendy Davis and all of these outside leftist groups who, are all for abortion after 20 weeks, or all for BLM and Antifa for cops, all these things, they're saying that I hate veterans. They're saying that I hate old people. They're saying that I hate women because I voted against these big spending bills, these appropriations bills. Then I used to joke in my speeches that they were one day going to say I hate puppies. And Ben, I'm not making this up. 2 weeks ago, they put out mailers saying, I hate puppies. Like, this is what they do. I mean, it's literally, it's like a walking just joke. It's like an SNL skit, you know? And at the end of the day, the American people see through that.
Well, that is definitely true. Representative Roy, we are up on the end of the hour. Congratulations on your victory, and we're all crossing our fingers for Arizona and Pennsylvania for the president so that Republicans can have a clean, excellent night. Representative Roy, appreciate the time. You're listening to The Ben Shapiro Show. We'll be back tomorrow with all of your updates.